a retreat place.
And you hear the birds and trees, and it is community, it's learning.
Hello everyone. Hello. I can see some names that I've seen already the past few days. Hello Andres, hello Lena, hello Onin, hello Sergey, that's right behind me actually. Simon also. Maybe you can again see my hand. No, not today. Yeah, you can see it a little. Hi Leonor. Hi Sarah. You can activate your video. Don't be shy, guys. Yes. Hey, Cinta. Oh, long time no see. Good to see you. Good to see you. Hi, Sarah. Yeah, people are starting to join little by little. Nice. Reaching. Hi, Sibyl. And there is a name in Russian. I truly apologize on the iPhone. I don't know how to pronounce it. Yes, please. Can you help me, Sergey? Alessia. Alessia. Darius again. Welcome back. I remember you had some question yesterday on the visit. Yes. Hello. Okay. Hello. Yes, we hear you. And please, guys, feel free to activate the webcam. It's good to see some faces, and also it's good for us to know when we present, see some reactions, how people feel about it. So yeah. I'll start with a little game, a little icebreaker, because I am quite curious. Oh, even more people, more people joining. Okay, up. Hello, thank you for sharing the video. Thank you. So I am inviting everyone now. On your Zoom, you have a little option down to show the participant list. It's written participants. It is, and then you have a list of everyone. And I hear you go, Sergey? Yeah, no problem. And there you have some commands. I think you can see there is an acknowledgement, there is an X, there is some arrows, and if you see it, if you see what I'm talking about, a little command, just press the green button. So you have to open the participant list, and yes, I see quite a few having it already. So again, it's on the bottom on Zoom. You can see on the participant list, you just click on participant, and you have a few controls there. So you can say yes or no. Yeah, I can see some voting already. Nice, nice. Good. So I'm gonna reset it again, and if you don't see it, you can feel free to use the chat. I will read that also. So who was there on Monday for our webinar on food made by Antoine? So if you were there, yeah, just press the green button. If you weren't there, press the red one. Okay. So quite new people already. You can also comment on the chat if you have a good excuse of why you weren't there, but don't worry, the replay is ready. It's already, we already posted it on our Facebook page, and it will be coming soon. All right. Second question. Who has the coronavirus right now? Yeah, we have some quite healthy people. That's good. And if you have it, all my good wishes of health. Definitely. Okay, let it be that way. And maybe the last question before giving the floor to Simon, who is a beginner regarding renewable energy and eager to learn a lot more about it. Okay. So I think we can start. Simon, you will be able to unmute your mic in just a few seconds. Yeah. Yeah. I leave the floor to you.
Okay. Hello, everyone. So I guess you can hear me now. Simon, I would like to share my screen, but it doesn't work.
Okay, I'm taking care of that.
Well, in general, I want to start with two questions. The first one is, and you can again reply as you did before in the chat. Who of you thinks that renewables are the future, first of all? And you can click on that, and then you can see, or we can see. Do we already have some answers, Abdul?
I think I'm the only one that I've answered. No, Sinta. Yes, I answered. A lot of believers. You can open again the participant view.
Well,
we have one no.
We have one no, okay. Well, that's also interesting. And I have another question. I hope you also can see my screen right now. And the next question I have is, who thinks that our industrial and globalized world can run on renewables? And these are two very different questions, I would say. It's maybe also interesting to get your ideas on this. And we can discuss these two questions also later on in the question round after the presentation. For now, I would just like to continue. And so basically what I want to bring to you today is a topic that I've been already working on and researching on for quite some time. And it is, I termed it energy transition as energy descent. So basically why our renewable future might be different than we expect or that many people expect. And on the picture, you can see me, a bit younger version of me in Berlin doing a maintenance on a small wind turbine for a project. So I'm involved in these kind of projects already since some time. And yeah, so I want to first bring your attention to a few fun, or maybe not so much fun facts on our energy consumption. The first one is the concept or notion of energy slaves. An energy slave is basically, you can imagine it as an imaginary human laborer that works on a treadmill or on a bike to provide for the energy needs of you or of any other person. And yeah, we as rich citizens of developed countries, we need about 50 energy slaves to work for us 24/7. So these are 50 people on a bike 24/7 just to provide for the energy needs we have. And that's of course a quite high amount of people. If you would scale this up to the global level, this would equate to 200 to 300 billion people just being there to provide for our energy needs. And that's of course a huge number. Well, we don't get all the energy from human slaves, of course. In former times it was different, so a lot of work has been done by humans, but now we use external sources mainly, and this could be coal or oil, gas, it can be solar and wind, for example. And specifically for oil, which is around 1/3 of the entire energy consumption of our societies, there's quite some interesting facts about this. So human societies, they consume around 100 million barrels of oil per day. And if you would put those oil barrels next to each other, these oil barrels would span the equator 1.5 times, and this per day. So let that sink in. Per day, our consumption of oil, which is only 1/3 of our energy consumption, circumferences the equator 1.5 times. That's a straight line of 60,000 kilometers of oil barrels next to each other per day. So that is quite some amount. And yeah, so that's just for you to get some idea on these numbers. And in the following, I want to present to you three main challenges. There are more challenges, but three main challenges which will probably make the energy transition a more cumbersome, more difficult challenge than many mainstream analysts might think. The first is that renewables grow from a small base. And on the graph here, you can see the primary energy consumption of human societies from 1800 to 2018. And primary energy consumption is total energy consumption. And you can see very well that, it grew rapidly from the 1950s onwards. And renewables grow from a very small base. They are almost actually indistinguishable. And they just make up these two small layers up here, wind and solar. There's a 3% of global energy consumption, primary energy consumption. And most of the rest is basically fossil fuels. So the remainder of 85% is fossil fuels. Still, after 10 to 20 years, we're already in kind of energy transition, at least on paper. Then the second challenge I want to present is that renewable technologies rely on fossil fuels, especially for the manufacturing and their entire life cycle. And I just want to bring this example of a modern wind turbine. If you just think about what does it need to manufacture such a wind turbine and to put it in place and maybe also demolish it after the end of life, what do we actually need there? And it needs a lot of metals and alloys, be it for the generator, for the rotor hub. And these things are basically mined with fossil fuels. Then we need a lot of concrete for the foundation and for the tower. And also the use of petrochemical products such as plastics or lubricants or oils in many parts of the turbine, from the gearbox to the rotor blades, is very common and is basically needed for such a technology to work. I wanted to mention that all of these points I bring are not really a case against renewable energies. It's more a case for being aware of the fallbacks or the difficulties and the challenges of renewables, and not to have excessive or maybe unwarranted faith in these technologies to solve our energy related predicaments. So it's not a case against renewables at all. It's just to get awareness on this. And you can see all of these materials, the whole production of those is highly interwoven with fossil fuels. And of course, it's conceivable theoretically that we can power, or we can produce these metals and concrete, plastics based on renewable materials or on renewable electricity. But as of now, no solar panel or no wind turbine exists that has been built based on renewables only. Then the third and last reason I want to bring is that power density of renewables is low compared to incumbent fossil fuel. What is power density? Power density is the rate of energy usage per unit area. For all the non-energy geeks, that's basically how much energy do you get in a certain amount of time. It can be an hour or it can be a day from 1 square meter of a certain energy infrastructure. And this for renewables is very low, as you can see on this graph. This is showing the power densities of generation from wind, solar, and you can see them down on the bottom, very small bars, almost not to see. And then also from thermal electricity generation, that's generation from oil, gas, coal or nuclear power plants, and also from oil and gas wells. So that means basically that the power densities of renewable energies are by some orders of magnitude, so like 1,000 times lower than generation of the incumbent energy system we have right now. And this of course raises the difficult question or the challenge to on land use. So if in the future we rely a lot on renewables, that means basically that our energy infrastructures and the energy supply infrastructures will occupy much larger areas than the current energy infrastructures do. So these three reasons, plus some more, including also human-induced climate change, for example, they basically mean that we have to probably think a bit differently about the future of energy and also on how our energy supply will be basically taken, or how we can basically satisfy that. And these kind of energy futures have been described by some thinkers, such as co-originator of permaculture David Holmgren, as energy descent. And energy descent, what do I mean by that, or what do people mean by that? That is, in basically, energy descent can be understood as viable pathways for human societies on the lower energy futures, or lower availability of energy in the future. And of course, this future is not constituted yet, and there are many uncertainties about many things, such as technological developments, social economic disruptions, as we have right now with the corona pandemic. Also uncertainties about how such a transformation to renewables might come about. Will it be forced upon us, or this energy descent, let's say, will it be forced upon us, or do we voluntarily decrease our energy consumption already? And also, of course, it's not really clear yet how economic and social arrangements and forms, or which forms these kind of things take in a future that has lower energy available. So these pathways are not determined yet, basically. And what definitely will be in store if such an energy descent future materializes is lower availability of energy, and it will change the paradigms we are currently looking at, the socioeconomic paradigms, mainly the fixation with economic growth, and also consumerism and other points. However, it's important to state, this is a picture of Suderbyn, by the way. It's important to state that such a energy descent future should not be equated at all with something, let's say, with going back to the cave, or something like deprivation or suffering, but it can be much more liberating in many cases for people if it is planned for and if it is done in a good way. And I think these futures which we don't, or which we have not discovered yet, and these paths we will walk towards this energy descent future, it will involve a couple of things, namely embracing voluntary simplicity, redefining what the good life actually means and how to provide for these means in regenerative ways. And the first step that everyone can take is to increase their energy literacy and acknowledging the fact that a future with less available energy is probably in order. So with this kind of knowledge and raising this awareness on energy literacy to know how much we consume actually, this can pave the way so that together we all can create these ways towards a more energy descent future. So thanks a lot for now. That's it for the talk. And now we can hop into the questions, I hope.
Yes, I'm joining you, Simon.
You're joining me, that's nice. Abdul, from the back.
Give me a little space. Thank you. Yes. So we have a few questions. Please don't hesitate to hit the chat, or even to take the word and unlock your mic. I would be happy to. So we have several questions from Florent. Florent, yes. What is the scientific definition of energy?
The energy is the capacity to do work. Well, it means physical transformation of matter, material, and making heat.
Mm-hmm. So that's what we talk about. Flows, for instance, when you have water flows, or when we have stored energy in the form of heat.
I mean, there are different forms of energy, but energy always, if you use energy, you do work, and work means you transform matter, or you heat something up, and there are different forms. It can be solar, wind, it can be fossil energies, it can be chemical energy, it can be many different things then in the end.
Following that up, why is the concept of free energy actually impossible?
Well, it contradicts a couple of laws, of physical thermodynamic laws which govern the world we live in. And if those laws would not hold, we would not live in this world as we live right now anyways. So we are not we, but science is pretty confident that these laws hold, at least on a macroscopic level where we live in. We don't live on the atomic or subatomic scale. And that basically means that free energy, that you can create something from nothing, or that something can go on forever without being depleted, is not possible. I mean, you know this maybe with your wallet, you have money in that, but I mean, it will not just get more all the time, except if you get bailed out for banks and stuff. But I mean, that's a different question, because money is virtual anyways, in many cases. So free energy devices are, I think, people cling to it and they think, oh, that would be very nice to have it, but just dreaming about something or hoping something is true doesn't make it true.
Okay, and the research that's in this direction proves you right for now. So
yeah, I mean, if free energy devices would work, then probably people would be using them on a much larger scale than they are now using them. Yeah.
You talked a lot about energy descent and the planning for it. Do you have a time frame that we should start planning?
As soon as possible.
And how long would...
I mean, the planning of this will take, I mean, the execution of such a large scale downscaling of society will, maybe let's put it again, I hope this will happen. I don't think it will happen because we have inertia in our current economic system and societies that will counteract these kind of things. But a planning that definitely should take place from now onwards, and the way towards such a future of less energy consumption may take many decades, basically. And it probably will, at the same time as we roll out more of the renewable energies in the energy systems, as we do already in Germany. It's 40% of electricity is based on renewables already. I mean, that's only electricity. Electricity is only 20% of energy consumption, but we see some progress there. But I think in the years when we have more renewables, or more renewables will be used, we will see that energy descent might be the cheaper option than trying to have the same lifestyle as we have right now. But it would be good to speak about this openly, politically, and maybe also on the industrial or business side to really accommodate for this possibility. And it's again different if you live in a developed country or if you live in a developing country.
That's what you mentioned when you talked about power density and the amount of land needed to do that.
Yeah.
Between agriculture, between the housing, if now we have to improve or at least invest more land into energy, what's left?
Not so much, I guess.
Not so much, especially since...
I mean, especially also since population might grow more. And the burden lies on the industrialized countries. I mean, here we have per capita energy consumption, which is much higher than in developing countries. So the first way to reduce is in these countries, be it the US or in Europe. So this is the first thing that has to be done anyways, or has to be done.
Okay, question from Darius. What about the research about new energy sources?
Such as, I mean, fusion. There is a lot of research on fusion and a lot of research also on nuclear still. And there are some new concepts of nuclear, which might be promising, but it's, I mean, all these, to scale these technologies up. I mean, I gave this example with the barrels of oil. This is a tremendous amount of energy we currently use, and scaling up new technologies will basically take decades, 10, 20, 30, 40 years. If there is a viable nuclear reactor, it still needs to be built. People need to be relocated, or they have to agree on that. So it will still be a difficulty to scale it up to what we currently use as fossil fuel energy.
Another question. Yes, we have. Florent is quite active in this area.
Bringing them in.
Yes, of course. Yeah. What is the link between energy consumption and GDP on the country
Well,
stage?
it is basically a linear relationship. The higher your GDP, the higher the energy consumption of the country. Yeah.
And that's also what we saw with this growth of energy.
Yeah. I didn't bring this graph, but you can Google that and you just find a graph per country, actually.
Do you have some information on how coronavirus affected the energy consumption during last month?
I think for example, in China, energy consumption or industrial activity, which can be kind of equated with energy consumption, went down by 20 to 25%. Currently for Europe, it doesn't really affect it so much now, at least until the beginning of March it didn't. Now it might be affecting it a bit more, and there are estimates, at least for Germany, where I know a bit more from, that we will see a reduction in electricity use of 10%, 10 to 15%. This is, of course, a non-planned recession, different to what energy descent could be. but it might trigger some more of these discussions about the topic anyways. So as I said, for Germany, it's meant to be 10 to 15% less of electricity consumption.
An interesting question from Pepin, also from the Netherlands. Thank you, Pepin. The government is investing a lot in biomass energy. Basically, they are importing a lot of trees from the US to burn them in the biomass plants, and they call it renewable energy. But yes, it releases carbon just as coal, maybe. So would that be defined as sustainable biomass energy?
It depends who you are, and it depends on if you say it's sustainable or not. But in general, biomass is a very broad topic. Many different kinds of sources can fall under that. Certainly, if there are big plantations of wood in the US and they have to be shipped to Europe, it is questionable that these things are sustainable. But if you have a local plantation or local forest that is managed or using biomass, let's say residues, bio waste, for example, to make biogas, these things are a different story. So it depends very much on the use case you look at.
Do you think that the coronavirus could actually make people more open toward this energy descent?
Yeah, I just mentioned this before. It could be a trigger for people, individuals, to think about it a bit more, and also for more on a systemic level, on government level, to think a bit more about resilience of the current economic social system. And this might tie in with thoughts about energy. Yeah, it could be a trigger.
How to make decarbonization an obvious goal? That has been the question for the past decade.
Yeah, it has been a long way. I mean, how to make it an obvious goal? It is an obvious goal for many governments already to decarbonize until 2050. It will just be difficult to implement, I suppose, without making people angry that they don't have so much money left. So this is the difficulty in how are we managing the expectations of people into the future, while trying to implement things that might affect those people, and maybe to an extent that they are not used to, or that they don't like, that they are not able to drive the car here and there. So how do we manage these expectations as a society or a country? I think this is a very difficult question. Higher carbon prices is the first measure, of course, and the cap on carbon prices. And it is implemented already in the EU and also on the national level of some countries.
Yeah, really tied with this question also. What other methods could we use to encourage people to use less energy? So more on the individual level.
Yeah, I'm sometimes not sure if the individual level is the level that should be addressed.
Really?
Yeah, because it's more a systemic question. Of course, the individual level is already basically addressed if more energy efficient technologies are being used. For heat generation, for example, you can use a heat pump, which is very efficient compared to burning wood or oil or gas. So individuals can take choices, and governments support these kind of choices by having support programs, tax cuts on investments and these kind of things. So that definitely helps. What we see, however, on a larger scale, as soon as you introduce more efficient technologies, you use those technologies more. If diesel or gasoline prices go down, people drive more with the car. So we have this kind of, it's called Chevron's paradox. So the more efficient something gets, the more people use it, because it also gets cheaper economically. So that's why it's a bit difficult to really just look at the individual level.
Definitely.
But keeping wearing more warm clothes and not putting your room temperature up to 27 degrees is already a very easy thing.
We'll see. Question tied to Suderbyn. What is the energy consumption in Suderbyn Eco Village? Maybe per person? Or...
Come by. We have an energy workshop this afternoon, exactly on the topic. Yeah, per person we have.
We'll have also to compare it with a regular citizen.
Yeah, let's say from a regular citizen in Sweden, a household, the consumption of a household, not per capita, but just a household, we in Suderbyn use around 50% less of electricity, which is the main energy we use in Suderbyn, and also the main part that society in Sweden uses. So 50% less, and that's per capita. I don't really remember, 2,400 kilowatt hours per year, I think.
Yeah. Moreover, the car we use at Suderbyn, they use biogas.
Yeah.
Yeah. Besides that, is the electricity. Definitely, just as hosting this webinar, we have 5 computers already working here in the office.
Yeah, maybe for Suderbyn, we are on an island on Gotland, and this island, around half of the electricity generated on this island comes from wind turbines, so big wind turbines, and the other half comes from the main grid, from the Swedish grid, because there's a connection. Yeah, so that's.
So 50% less than a Swedish household. How is that 50% less practically possible? So I guess, Beatrice, your question, can we do more? Or can we do
it's
less?
practically possible because 20 people live on a property where normally 3 or 4 people live. That's why it's possible, because we share much more of common things. That's the main reason why.
Question from Andre. What is your most favorite energy source, and which you think the government in Europe should invest in the most? And I will extend it to governments in general.
Well, I don't have a very favorite one. It depends again a lot on the use case you have. And if we look at electricity, then for Germany, for example, wind is a good choice. Also solar in some areas. For some applications, you might need liquid fuels because they're very energy dense. You can put in 1 kilogram of gasoline, or let's say like this 1 barrel of oil. This contains the energy of 3 years of labor of a human, and you can burn it in 1 second, and you can have very powerful things being powered with that. So that's why we might also need some liquid fuels, but I don't really have a favorite. I mean, I like to build small wind turbines, but solar photovoltaic is much easier if you want to build a system.
That's really interesting. Maybe let's get back to the first question that you asked about can our industrial world work on renewables? And you scratch the surface with this power density. Where is it? I'm gonna get it later. So let's say, that one. Mm-hmm. So let's say in a construction setting or a digging setting, we would still need fossil fuels to do that.
I mean, we can use electricity for many things. Electricity can be also used in a very dense way. Okay. If we have the machines or a motor, for example, that works with electricity, and certainly in a world that is powered by renewables that generate electricity, such as solar or wind, we will see much higher part of the final energy consumption being electricity and not being fuels anymore. So it is possible to electrify many processes. It's possible to electrify cars, for example. It's possible to electrify heating in some ways. It's also possible to electrify mining to some extent. It's just a question, is it possible to do this in the next 10 or 20 years on a global scale? That's more the crucial point. And of course, all of this means that we would have a much higher electricity consumption. It means much more grids, much more construction of wind turbines and solar panels, and then of course the space issue and the land area issue. So that's more the difficult part.
Definitely. Related to that, and a question from Liz, do you see any type of transnational energy governance happening soon?
I mean, there are transnational bodies that work on energy, and the EU is a good case. There is a lot of collaboration and connection between the EU countries on the energy strategy of Europe, because it's tightly interconnected, at least on the electricity part and also on the gas grid. So there are a lot of focus on this collaboration. But national countries sometimes don't want to give up their power and their agencies. So that makes it a bit difficult to make rules for the entire EU. And then, of course, if you would spread this out to a global level, it would be even more difficult to find agreement.
So many questions, I don't know in which order. What are the energy return rates of solar panels and wind turbine?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay, this is another concept. I didn't talk about it before. It's called energy return on investment. You could look it up. I advise you to look that up. It's called also the abbreviation EROI, EROI. And for solar and wind, we have energy return on investment. It means how much energy do you put into an energy source and how much does it give you back, and the ratio of these two. And for solar, we have, I think, around 10 to 15 to 20. So you put in 1 unit of energy, you get out 15 units of energy. Or maybe a bit less, maybe 10. For wind, it is 1 to 20. So you put in 1 unit of energy and you get 20 units out. But this is again very case dependent, and this is only one number and one concept, and maybe doesn't signify too much of the usefulness of an energy source. It always depends on the context. And for some other ones in the heydays of oil in the 70s or in the 60s or even earlier, you had 1 energy unit being disbanded, and then you got back 50 or 60, 70 units of energy from this oil well you have. And also this energy return on investment for oil and fossil fuels, because they are finite, these are finite resources, they are declining. So right now oil has an ROE of 1 to 17. So it gets more expensive in terms of energy to invest in these sources, and it also gets more expensive than in terms of money. And that's an issue, because if more energy is needed to supply the energy sector, then there will be less energy available for the general public and the general industries. And that's also a tricky issue.
Yeah, I just took it from the workshop that you did to us about, to talk about the EROI, and you can really see this decrease of return of investment, especially for oil, especially for now. Thank you, Beatrice. With the production of electric cars on a large scale nowadays, do we think how to recycle and get rid of electric batteries or even electric cars themselves?
Yeah, so one point to this is that as we go into this energy transition, we will basically shift the societal problem of carbon emissions and the societal problems of finite fossil fuels. We will shift this to another area, and this is the extraction area of metals and new wastes. So this is the one point there, and the other one is these batteries. They can be used after they are not fit for being used in a car. They can be used for stationary applications in households, or they can be used for grid purposes as well. And it's possible to recycle lithium batteries. It just makes it again more expensive in terms of energy and in terms of money. So that's why there has to be a good governance system around that, so that these kind of recycling things really happen. And mainly it is done that the producer of batteries, they have to take back the batteries and recycle them. That's at least how it is in the EU.
A question from Beatrice about looking for interesting articles, books, and documentaries.
Yeah, I have a couple of them. I can send them later to you. Yeah, maybe that's the easiest. Just be updated on this Facebook post that Abdul will probably somehow make.
Yeah, actually Simon prepared a huge list of.
Yeah, I have some things. So I'll just send the link. It's easier.
Would there be enough rare elements like lithium in order to electrify all the fossil fuel industry? Yeah, that just comes back to the same question as before. I mean, how do we shift this one societal challenge or problem to another area? And it is enough for the rich countries, I would say. Just as it is right now. As it is right now. And it might also be enough for other things. It's not like everybody needs a car. It depends on how the whole system around it is designed. And if there's public transport that is working and affordable, then people might also be incentivized not to have a private car anymore so much. At least in the city. On the countryside, it's again a different thing. But here in Suderbyn, for example, we have 2 cars and we use them as a car pool.
And these kind of things are something that could be stepped up much more also on the countryside. But it means that people have to give up their old patterns of I go in my car, I drive to work, and this. I mean, it has to evolve somehow on how we use these resources together. Are there more questions?
I was going to ask the same. Are there more questions? I like the silence.
I like the silence as well.
To what extent Suderbyn is autonomous?
To a very little extent. We have a connection to the main grid for energy at least. And this is where we get all of the electricity. We use biogas, which is produced on Gotland, on the island where we are. And we use this biogas for the cars. Yeah, that's basically it. We have a couple of renewable resources. We use we have a wind turbine and some solar panels plus a biogas digester. So we produce our own biogas, and we're currently building a heating system so we can use the biogas in this heating system. We use some wood for stoves and ovens as well. But the share of local renewables is around 8% or 10%.
Okay. Any closing words?
Yeah, thanks for listening again, and I hope you learned something. Be vigilant and read what Abdul will post. There are quite some interesting books, articles, and web pages, YouTube interviews.
You can also read Simon's article.
Yeah, you can read my articles as well. They are not so much about energy descent, but they are more about energy policy and these kind of things. I think Abdul will probably send some link.
All right. So thank you everyone for joining. Nini, can you stay? Thank you everyone. Follow on the Facebook event. We will post all the books and all the article sources that Simon has created for us. The replay will also be available pretty soon, as soon as we finish the subtitles. And yeah, thank you for joining, and see you hopefully tomorrow for another webinar. I don't know who's doing that.
Yeah, I also don't know this guy.
Yeah, I don't know. I think his name is Abdul. I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. So yeah, have a great day. Enjoy your lunch, and yeah.
Take care. Bye-bye. You want to